How you doing, everybody? My name is Dr. Sami Baya. Please welcome back to my YouTube channel. How a covert narcissist seeks revenge. That's the title of this video. Covert narcissists, who typically exhibit more subtle forms of narcissism compared to overt narcissists, often seek revenge in indirect or manipulative ways. Their revenge tactics are usually characterized by passive aggressiveness, psychological manipulation, and a desire to undermine others without direct confrontation. So in this video, I'm gonna give you several ways a covert narcissist might seek revenge, with examples of each. Number one way covert narcissists seek revenge is through silent treatment. Ignoring someone completely to make them feel important is what covert narcissists know how to do best. For example, they'll deliberately not respond to messages or calls. Secondly, a covert narcissist will seek revenge through backhanded compliments. They'll give compliments with hidden criticism. For example, they'll say, "You are so brave to wear that outfit. I could never pull it off." Another way covert narcissist seeks revenge is through sabotaging efforts. They'll undermine someone's attempts to succeed. For example, they'll deliberately spread misinformation about a work project. They'll also gossip and spread rumors or negative information about someone. For example, they'll tell others that a person is unreliable without proof. They'll also feign innocence. They'll act like they didn't understand or mean harm. For example, they'll say, "I didn't realize that would upset you." A covert narcissist will seek revenge on you through playing the victim. They'll make themselves seem like the wrong party to garner sympathy. For example, they'll claim that someone's criticism was a personal attack. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through withholding affection. They'll remove affection or support when it is needed. For example, they'll refuse to comfort someone after a setback. They'll also seek revenge through minimizing achievements. They'll downplay someone's successes. For example, they'll say, "Oh, that's nice, but it is not a big deal compared to what I did." A covert narcissist will seek revenge through public humiliation. They'll subtly embarrass someone in front of others. For example, they'll make jokes at someone's expense during a group setting. They'll also feign ignorance. They'll pretend not to understand someone's needs or feelings. For example, a covert narcissist will act confused when someone explains that they are hurt. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through subtle insults. They'll use indirect comments to demean someone. For example, a covert narcissist will comment on someone's appearance with a veiled critique. A covert narcissist will create conflict. They'll instigate arguments between others. For example, they'll spread lies to create distrust between friends. They'll also exclude themselves from events, or they'll exclude someone from events. Intentionally, they'll leave someone out of social gatherings. For example, they're planning a party and they'll not invite a particular person. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through feigning helplessness or helpfulness. They'll feign helpfulness. They'll offer help that is actually detrimental. For example, they'll provide incorrect information under the guise of assistance. A covert narcissist will undermine confidence. They'll make remarks that erode self-esteem. For example, they'll say, "Are you sure you are ready for that promotion?" They'll also feign forgetfulness. They'll pretend to forget important details or promises. For example, they'll forget to complete a shared task that was agreed upon. They'll also undermine authority. They'll subtly discredit someone's position. For example, they'll whisper doubts about a boss's decisions. They'll also accuse falsely. They'll accuse someone of something they didn't do. For example, they'll claim someone stole an idea or a project. They'll also create drama. They'll cause unnecessary drama to disrupt someone's life. For example, they'll fake a crisis to draw attention away from someone else's achievements. A covert narcissist will manipulate perceptions. They'll influence others to see someone negatively. For example, they'll present selective facts to make someone seem incompetent. They'll pretend to be supportive. They'll act supportive while secretly undermining For example, they'll applaud someone's efforts, but privately they'll hope they'll fail. A covert narcissist will overemphasize failures. They'll highlight mistakes to diminish someone's accomplishments. For example, they'll remind someone of their past failures repeatedly. They'll criticize unnecessarily. They'll offer excessive and harsh criticism. For example, they'll critique someone's work in a way that is overly harsh and discouraging. They'll also create doubts. They'll sow seeds of doubt about someone's reliability. For example, they'll suggest that someone is not trustworthy in subtle ways. They'll also feign concern. They'll act overly concerned to interfere with someone's plans. For example, they'll express concern for someone's safety to discourage their independence. They'll blame others. They'll shift blame for their own mistakes onto someone else. For example, they'll claim a failed project was someone else's fault despite their own achievement or their own involvement. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through flattery to manipulate. They'll compliment someone to gain an advantage. For example, they'll praise someone excessively to get them to do a favor. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through emotional manipulation. They'll use someone's emotions against them. For example, they play on someone's insecurities to get what they want. They'll also discredit accomplishments. They'll minimize or discredit someone's achievements. For example, they'll downplay the significance of a colleague's promotion. They will also disrupt personal relationships. They'll interfere. The covert narcissist, they will interfere in someone's personal life to create turmoil. For example, they'll spread lies about someone's relationship to cause problems. A covert narcissist will do the victim blaming. They'll blame someone for problems that were not their fault. Example, they'll suggest someone brought trouble upon themselves by their own actions. They'll also feign competence. They'll pretend to be more capable than they are to overshadow others. For example, they'll take credit for a successful project that wasn't theirs. They'll also play on insecurities. They'll exploit someone's insecurities to get revenge. For example, they'll bring up someone's fear of failure to undermine their confidence. They'll also feign ignorance of boundaries. They'll disregard someone's boundaries under the pretense of not knowing. For example, they'll repeatedly interrupt someone despite being asked not to. A covert narcissist will also use sarcasm. They'll make sarcastic remarks to belittle someone. For example, they'll respond to someone's success with a sarcastic comment like, "Well, isn't that just amazing?" A covert narcissist will deliberately misunderstand something. They'll misinterpret someone's words or actions to create conflict. For example, they'll take a harmless comment as an insult to provoke a reaction. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through undermining professional relationships. They'll try to damage someone's work relationships. For example, they'll spread rumors about a colleague to make them look unprofessional. They'll also publicly question competence. They'll subtly question someone's abilities in public. For example, they'll say, "Are you sure you're the best person for this task?" They'll also use intimidation. They'll subtly intimidate someone to make them feel powerless. For example, they'll use a condescending tone to assert dominance. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through imitating. They'll mimic someone's behavior in a mocking way. For example, they'll imitate someone's speech or mannerisms to make them look foolish. A covert narcissist will avoid responsibility for their actions while blaming others. For example, they'll deny any fault in a failed project and blame team members. A covert narcissist will also use passive-aggressive comments. They'll make indirect hostile remarks. For example, they'll say, "It must be nice to have everything handed to you." They'll also feign lack of resources. They'll pretend they don't have what someone needs to hinder their progress. For example, they'll claim they don't have access to important information. They'll also feign friendship. They'll pretend to be a friend to gain trust and then betray it. For example, they'll gain someone's trust to later use their secrets against them. A covert narcissist will also use emotional blackmail. They'll use someone's feelings to control them. For example, they'll threaten to withdraw affection if they don't comply with their demands. They'll also make unreasonable demands. They'll set up impossible standards or expectations. For example, they'll ask someone to complete a task in an unrealistic time frame. They'll also create confusion. They'll deliberately create confusion to undermine someone's actions. For example, they'll give contradictory instructions to a colleague. They'll also discredit ideas. They'll sabotage someone's ideas for suggestions. They'll also, for example, they'll dismiss someone's proposal without consideration to make them feel unworthy. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through feigning lack of understanding. They'll pretend not to understand someone's legitimate concerns. For example, they'll act confused about why a certain request is important. They'll also overload with work. Giving someone excessive work to overwhelm them is what covert narcissists will do. They'll assign additional tasks to make it impossible to meet deadlines. They'll also mimic decisions. They'll take credit for someone else's decisions or ideas. For example, they'll claim ownership of a colleague's innovative idea. They will also disrupt personal time. Interrupting someone's personal time or space is what covert narcissists know how to do best. For example, they'll frequently call or message during off hours to invade their personal time. They'll also use flattery as a weapon. They'll use excessive praise to manipulate someone. For example, they'll shower someone with compliments to get them to lower their guard. They will also deliberately neglect. Neglecting someone's needs or requests intentionally is what they will do. A covert narcissist will ignore someone's request for help to create difficulties. A covert narcissist will also use personal information against someone. Leveraging someone's personal details to harm them is what they do. Example, they'll reveal private information in a public setting. They will act overly professional to undermine someone's expertise. In short, they'll be feigning professionalism. They'll act condescendingly to undermine someone's professional standing. They'll also instigate jealousy. They'll create situations to make others feel jealous. For example, they'll brag excessively about personal achievements to make others feel inferior. Then they will ignore boundaries. They'll disregard someone's personal or professional boundaries. For example, a covert narcissist entering someone's office or personal space without permission is what they love doing. They also undermine efforts. They'll subtly obstruct someone's progress or efforts. For example, they'll delay important approvals or resources needed for a project. A covert narcissist will also create disruptions. They'll cause disruptions to disturb someone's work or life. For example, making noise or distractions in someone's workspace. A covert narcissist will make false promises. They'll promise something they have no intention of delivering. For example, they'll commit to assisting you with a task and then they'll fail to do so. They'll also do subtle comparisons. They'll make comparisons that highlight someone's perceived shortcomings. For example, they'll compare someone's performance unfavorably to others. They'll also use deception. A covert narcissist will employ deceitful tactics to manipulate situations. For example, they'll pretend to be supportive while secretly working against someone. Covert narcissists will feign ignorance of achievements. They'll pretend not to know about someone's accomplishments. For example, they'll actively ignore someone's achievements in conversations. They'll create dependency. They'll make someone feel dependent on them for support. Example, they'll offer help that's actually intended to create reliance. They'll also use emotional manipulation. They'll use emotions to control someone's actions. For example, a covert narcissist will exploit someone's guilt to get them to agree to unfavorable terms. They'll also control narratives about someone to manipulate perception. They'll also feign understanding. They'll pretend to understand someone's situation but actually undermine them. For example, they'll act empathetic while subtly criticizing their decisions. Now, a covert narcissist will use exaggeration. They'll exaggerate someone's flaws or mistakes to discredit them. For example, they'll make a small mistake seem like a major failure. There's emotional detachment, where a covert narcissist will seek revenge through remaining emotionally detached to avoid accountability. For example, they'll show no empathy when someone is clearly distressed. They'll also feign ignorance of impact. They'll pretend not to realize the impact of their actions. For example, they'll act surprised when their actions causes distress. They'll also create false expectations. So, setting up unrealistic expectations to ensure failure is popular with narcissists. For example, They will set impractical deadlines or goals for someone. They'll also use humor to disarm. They'll make jokes at someone's expense to avoid direct conflict. For example, they'll use humor to belittle someone's efforts. They'll also manipulate resources. They'll control access to resources to hinder someone's progress. For example, they'll restrict access to necessary tools or information. They'll also undermine personal relationships. For instance, they'll interfere with someone's personal relationships to cause strife. For example, they'll tell a partner that their friend is a bad influence. They'll also feign an awareness of needs. They'll pretend not to know what someone needs or requires. For example, they'll ignore a request for help and claim ignorance. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through creating discrepancies. They'll make conflicting statements to confuse or mislead. For example, they'll provide contradictory information to a team. They'll also subtly invalidate someone. They'll invalidate someone's feelings or experiences. For example, they'll dismiss someone's concerns as unimportant or exaggerated. They'll also feign support while sabotaging. They'll act supportive while subtly undermining. For example, they'll offer to help while doing so in a way that ensures failure. A covert narcissist will also use insults disguised as jokes. They'll make insulting remarks under the guise of humor. For example, they'll say, "I'm just joking, but you really are terrible at this." A covert narcissist will create financial strains. They'll deliberately cause financial difficulties. For example, they'll delay payments or cause unnecessary expenses. A covert narcissist will seek revenge through manipulative silence. They will withhold communication to create tension. For example, they'll not speak to someone for days to create discomfort. A covert narcissist will also expose vulnerabilities. They'll reveal someone's vulnerabilities to others. For example, sharing personal weaknesses or failures with others. A covert narcissist will also use incompetence as a weapon. They'll pretend to be incompetent to hinder others. For example, they'll feign ignorance in order to obstruct a process or project. A covert narcissist will make excessive demands. They'll require unreasonable levels of performance or output in those demands. For example, they'll set unachievable goals to ensure someone fails. A covert narcissist will mislead information. They'll provide false or misleading information to create problems. For example, they'll give incorrect instructions that lead to errors. They'll feign friendliness. They'll pretend to be friendly to gain trust and then betray it. For example, they'll act warm and supportive only to later undermine someone. A covert narcissist will discredit efforts. They'll undermine someone's hard work or efforts. For example, they'll claim credit for someone else's hard work or ideas. A covert narcissist will use emotional leverage. They'll exploit someone's emotional state to get their way. For example, they'll use someone's fears or insecurities to manipulate them. A covert narcissist will create social isolation. Working to isolate someone socially is what they know how to do best. For example, they'll spread rumors to make others distance themselves from a person. A covert narcissist will subtly intimidate someone. They'll use subtle tactics to intimidate or pressure someone. For example, they'll use aggressive body language or tones to dominate conversations. They'll also feign competence. They'll act like an expert to overshadow others. For example, they'll take over discussions and decisions to appear more knowledgeable. A covert narcissist will sabotage personal projects. They'll undermine someone's personal projects or ambitions. For example, they'll disrupt someone's creative or personal endeavors. Using flattery to gain trust is another way covert narcissists will seek revenge. They'll compliment excessively to manipulate. For example, they'll praise someone excessively to lower their defenses. They'll also create false conflicts. They'll manufacture conflicts to create division. For example, they'll stir up disagreements between colleagues or friends. A covert narcissist will feign an awareness of mistakes. They'll act like they didn't make a mistake to avoid responsibility. For example, they'll ignore errors and blaming others for issues. They'll also manipulate perceptions of others. They'll influence how others perceive someone negatively. For example, they'll spread false information to damage someone's reputation. A covert narcissist will also create confusion and chaos. They'll introduce chaos to disrupt someone's stability. For example, they'll deliberately cause disruptions or confusion in someone's life or work. A covert narcissist will feign interest. They'll pretend to be interested in someone's life to later use that information against them. For example, they'll ask probing questions to gain or to gather information for manipulation. And lastly, a covert narcissist will seek revenge through engaging in passive-aggressive behavior. They'll use passive-aggressive tactics to express hostility. For example, they'll leave subtle negative notes or messages. Understanding these tactics can help in identifying and dealing with covert narcissism and setting appropriate boundaries to protect oneself from such manipulative behaviors. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've learned a thing or two. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you've not done so. Thank you.